I would be unable to graduate them. He said, but we don't. He said and that goes where with not just language but also flying ability. He said we get them to the level that their country is willing to accept, and we give them their certificate and send them home. He said, but they don't meet our levels. And he was specifically talking about the Saudis. In the same breath, he mentioned that
Yeah.
other countries like Egypt and Poland excel in the program. So, but yeah, he's like, they graduate, we don't, or we graduate them, but they don't graduate. So I think they have other issues other than just language that they're not happy about. So anyway,
But aren't we just then passing the problem? Well, I don't even want to think about
well, no,
that.
we are. We're passing the problem from us to Rucker, from Rucker back to the contractors in Saudi Arabia that deal with the pilots,
Exactly.
and that's exactly what's going on. And those contractors are often passing that back to their senior level pilots who aren't dealing with it anyway. So there are a lot of issues, and those sometimes end up in crashes. Some of those issues, but they seem to be happy with what we're doing so far. I mean, I don't know if it's adequate or not, but that's why we're redesigning the program, right?
Well, there's always room
Yeah.
for improvement, and that's
Yeah.
how I think probably our culture says, you can always make it better,
Yeah.
at 2.0.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of countries that are like, what's a problem? You're fine.
Yeah.
So
And that
that's
is
probably a culture thing.
specifically Saudi Arabia. They don't challenge things. It's just not their way. It's what the commander told me to do. I will do it. Okay. What if it gets you killed?
Exactly.
What if it gets you killed? Well, the commander told me to do
Well,
it. It's like, okay, cool. All right, dude.
and that's cultural too, because
It
it's
is.
if I get killed, well, that's as God wills it. So
Yeah, right, right.
Right.
yeah.
Anyway, the Saudis aside, what about these 9 interaction prompts?
So before this chapter in this
Yeah.
book, I hadn't ever heard of ICAO levels or level 4.
Oh, okay.
And we is there maybe we should put a page or however long it is
Hmm.
describing that level 4 in an appendix or in the appendices for our book
I
and say
think I
this is
have.
the goal that you should be striving for according to ICAO.
I think I have seen something to that effect. Isn't there, Gene, that you guys are working on?
I'm thinking that we have you're thinking about the commonalities between the 3 areas.
Yeah.
But I think we could probably work on an appendix where we list the ICAO, and then probably we need to put it next to FAA, right? Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
FAA requirements are. These are the
Yeah.
ICAO requirements. These are the FAA requirements.
Yeah.
And then this is some of the requirements that follow-on training has told us that y'all need to do.
Right.
Maybe something like that. Maybe a 3 chart.
Yeah.
That would
Unfortunately.
be great. And we do have the ICAO rubric.
Yeah. Right.
It's in the book club under the ICAO stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of our students are painfully aware of what ICAO level 4 means.
Yeah.
Yeah, but our instructors may not be.
No, probably not. They probably aren't. No.
Yeah.
If they've taught long enough, they've heard of it, but they may not know what it means. I couldn't tell you exactly what it means.
I couldn't either until we did that thing for
Yeah.
Silk. So no, I couldn't.
And it's not the only level test these guys face. You also see, especially in Europe, you hear a lot about the STANEC test as well, which
Yeah.
is very similar to our OPI. So a lot of these tests get thrown around.
Depending on the country, yes.
Right. Right.
Did you teach STANAG courses when you were in, where was it? You said you were Slovakia?
Yes, I did. Some.
Okay.
Some.
Because I've taught some too, and it's just, I'm just feeling that just looking at all of this, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Imagine how these pilots and ATCs feel.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Cool. Other comments? If not, we'll move on. We're actually at 2:47, so we're getting there. And we probably won't get
Okay.
to all the slides, but all right.
Hey, Charles.
Sir.
Hey, real quick.
Yeah,
You
go
were
ahead.
talking about, our students leave here and then they go to, fall on training and so forth. But
Mhm.
it was interesting when the instructor pilots were here and then Major Spitz had talked about how the international
Mhm.
students that they have will often get additional training or,
Yeah.
hours or flight hours, and also English, I guess, too, was part of that. So it's just kind
Right.
of built into their program. That's kind of interesting. I didn't
A-
realize that
And
until
I
you
think
said
Columbus
that. But
does it a little bit differently, I think, actually, because I've talked to, the guys at Columbus, but then talked to the guys at Shepherd, where they don't seem to be emphasizing that as much. So
no, okay.
I think even within the training pipeline, they're not getting the same treatment.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and we can't assume that. Like our
No.
instructors are trying to get them
Yeah.
to the level or help them get there where they don't need that additional. But
Right.
reality is realities.
Right. Well, when I was down in Pensacola, talking with the trainers down there, some of them seriously feared getting in the cockpit with a student pilot or with a foreign student pilot.
Yeah.
And they talked about how painful it was every day flying with some of the Saudis. Now they train other students too. They have Polish and Italian, Japanese, and they talk about what a joy it is to fly with the Poles and with the Italians, but how painful and scary it is to fly with the Saudis.
Yeah, when I was
and
when I was down
actually
in
Saudis and
Columbus,
Japanese, actually Saudis and Japanese, they say both of them are kind of scary pilots
Yeah.
for them. So different trainings even, I think, have a different perception maybe.
A couple years ago, I did a site visit. Somebody else apparently couldn't go, so I got in at the last minute to Marine Corps Air Station, North Carolina. I can't remember.
Beaufort?
No, it was something River. New
Yeah.
River? Yeah.
Yeah, right, New River.
But when we were meeting with the IPs, one of the very surprising thing, and not really surprising in hindsight, but they were telling us that they do risk assessments for every single flight, and it's only our Japanese students that go there because that's where they're flying what's the aircraft that's the hybrid?
The Osprey.
Yes. And they said that for every flight with a Japanese student, they add 5 points to the risk assessment because the language is absolutely the issue, that if anything, and we've heard this a million times now, if anything out of the norm occurs, they immediately go to Japanese because they get a little freaked out.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, the rest of the slides are just discussion points. So we probably won't get through all of them. And I took just ideas and then kind of threw out a question for that idea. So like here, she talked about, or actually Barshi and Healy talked about pausing, speech rate, and super segmentals. And they were talking about controllers talking to pilots that were, foreign pilots coming into the area. And that they had a very difficult time when the pattern was different, when the speech rate was too fast or too slow, too many pauses, not enough pauses, super segmentals. And so my question there was, how can we teach this to non-native speakers? How can we get them used to these different rhythms in speech? Thoughts on that?
In a lot of ways. They should do pronunciation ISTs. I'm not sure how many teachers, a lot of teachers, according to my survey, skipped the pronunciation thing that talked about super segmentals and other related things in that resource in 302. So, as I've said before, I like teaching that unit and using music, limericks, things like that to get them thinking about rhythm and chunking and that sort of thing. Pilots, they had fun with it and made them think about it. But as far as I guess you'd have to do a lot of audio with real situations, maybe live ATC, or maybe we can create an activity actually with a whole bunch of different phrases and just change the pitch or the emphasis or whatever that, and make questions. And this would be good for an LMS. What is this speaker stressing? What do they mean by this? What do you know what I mean? Like when they repeat something back and they're correcting the number, or they're correcting one part of it, or they raise the pitch on one part, which indicates they're in doubt or they're questioning.
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
and you can just keep pushing, make questions like that. You know. I'm
Mm.
just thinking this is coming out of my head right now, but
Sure.
no, you know, I think it'd be a good idea to create something like that.
I have
Hey,
used.
John.
Go. Yeah. Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead,
No. Go
Charles.
ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, no, John. No, that's awesome because that reminds me of in chapter 1, they talk about that flight into New York, and he's the co-pilot's. We just running out of running
Oh
out of
yeah, yeah.
fuel, and then that one of the authors did a whole webinar and included that and kind of broke it down, and that would be cool. I think just taking a real world situation and breaking it down to where they have to cover these different parts and asking questions about, well, what did they mean here, or why didn't they stress it, and stuff like that. But anyway,
This
Cool.
is kind of interesting. Robert, did you talk about did you go to that training in the PDD day that was given by the Monterey instructors about teaching listening strategies?
no, I don't think
Okay,
so.
sorry, I wasn't sure if I'm in and out right now, but because they did a thing about kind of similar to what y'all are talking about, and they had them adjusting to speaker's voice and predicting the emotional overtone, trying not just hearing the words.
Right.
It was interesting, and putting it into a sociocultural context. So it was very interesting because I was looking, I signed up to this because I wanted to see what else can we do besides closed activities and comprehension questions.
Yeah.
And hoping for something, and they had some good ideas and stuff. That
Oh, cool.
ESL students are so focused on just translating that they sometimes miss some of those nuances
Yeah.
that are actually pretty critical to understanding the full meaning of what was just said. But anyway.
No. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's all. And from day one of general English, we teach them please and thank you and you're welcome, which is very important for English or most languages. But then emergency situation, you're not like, oh, we're just running out of fuel, not a big deal. I mean, it shouldn't come across that way, as being polite. So
Right.
anyway.
I've used Live ATC quite a bit with my students, but one of the biggest problems with that is understanding how much they really get, and how do you evaluate that? It's and it is usually, if they don't get it, it's because of the speech rate and the pauses in the speech. And
I think if we could have how they have themes for these IST days, sometimes maybe have a themed IST afternoon, maybe just for ANC, or maybe for everybody, but focused on the super segmentals and speech rates and that sort of thing. And
maybe, yeah.
Ideas people have, or or maybe webinars or something else from outside.
Sure.
Because I don't think a lot of people really are comfortable teaching that.
No, it's tough to teach. It's tough to do.
Yeah.
Other ideas on that? Thoughts on that? Okay. Well, the next point is the idea of plain English versus standard phraseology. We talk about this a lot, but Bieswanger went farther into talking about code switching and how it's almost like switching between two languages. If you speak more than one language, and I do, sometimes you may ask me a question in one language and I might switch over to explain to someone else in another language and say, well, what'd they say? And I go, hold on. I don't know. It was in another language, And I think this code switching, even between standard and plain English, can be kind of the same thing. So how can we practice that? I mean, I know it's hard for me sometimes to code switch. So how can we practice that in class?
I think I'd use sports, but you're still going to stay in the same language. Like maybe, have, 20 seconds of the championship basketball game or something. And then say, oh, wait a minute, what are we doing now? You know what I mean? Just enough to catch our attention or see a play. And then what kind of that kind of, I mean, maybe cause we could do distractions through, different means, but we're not going to totally code switch here.
Mhm.
But maybe distractors more like.
Okay, but we kind of do totally code switch between standard phraseology and plain English.
I like that idea of trying to figure out how could we make an activity that had them using standard phraseology, and then where something happens, so now they got to just talk about it because
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
not standard phraseology to describe that situation.
Mhm.
That could be kind of an interesting thing to do. I don't know,
Mm.
ask them to go through some of the calls and go from this place to this place, and I don't know. I'm not sure how that would work out, but then to have them talk about something that is, what the heck? There's a coyote on the runway. Sorry, that's from the.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think
From
it
our
would
old
be
book.
And that whole deal with the dogs on the runway. Every time I hear that recording, I'm like,
really.
first of all, it wouldn't happen. It's very rare to see coyotes anywhere on the runway.
Maybe it's where you live, Charles.
Well, no, because it's fenced in, and most big airports, especially military
I'm
airports,
just
have
teasing.
military airports have animal control people.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And they also have chain link fences around them.
Oh, Lackland must be busy with those jackrabbits.
Yeah, they are actually. They are
Well, you know
actually.
what? Maybe the exercise could be something like, and combine two things where you have somebody reading out the bolded for the day,
Mhm.
and then have them be practicing whatever, and then an emergency happens, and then they can switch to plain English for the emergency.
Mhm, mhm.
How cool would it
And
be
that
to
sounds
have like a video? I'm thinking, okay, old school sim lab, driver's ed in the 90s, where we watched a movie of somebody driving from the perspective of the driver's seat,
Mhm.
and we had to try to make it turn, but of course the video didn't respond to what we were doing. It just, there was a light that said we did it right or we did it wrong, green or red.
Right.
So here's my thought: is there's a video playing from the cockpit perspective, and they're going through doing their their routine calls, and a bird flies past. So
Yeah.
now you gotta talk about the bird. I don't know.
I like that one where there's that video that I think they show it in the sim lab where there's this jet flying along, and suddenly a Cessna style smaller aircraft cuts in front of them, like within just feet.
Ew.
Oh,
Um,
good.
And you hear the pilots talking before it happens, and the register almost immediately switches into, "Oh my God, did you see that?" Right? It goes from standard, 2-1 spike, blah blah blah. My God, did you see that? The register just switches that fast. It's like, whoa. But
Would it be possible to do something like that in VBS?
I don't know. Maybe.
VBS.
Robert?
Yeah, sure. Well, yes, once we get those radios working. But yeah, no, that definitely. And I know when we brought up VBS and aviation English, it was sort of like, well, we're gonna have the sim lab, so maybe not but and Guy and I have been talking, we can still do really cool aviation English
Mhm.
stuff with VBS. So definitely
Mhm.
that's something that could be worked on.
Sure.
Yeah, because you can design it. I mean, you can design it where like everything's, your mission is moving along smoothly. There is a kind of a sim airplane in there, and then all of a sudden something happens or gets in your way, and then okay, what do you do? Or, and you got to communicate that between
Sure.
students.
Yeah, emergency light, anything in the cockpit.
Right.
Start
Yeah.
blinking.
Does VBS 3 have the ability to record what they said and like?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm excited because last week I was looking into that because you can record the whole mission. It's awesome. You can set it up to where as soon as the mission starts, it's recording. Everything you say is being recorded. Problem is right now, again, the radio feature, which is terrible, it's not working. And we're trying to get that going because when you do the after action review, you can review all of that from any angle and listen to anybody's communication that they said during the mission.
'Cause when
go
it-
over with the students. So
It'd be really cool. Each set of students does like a 5-minute mission where something crazy happens in the middle. So first you can analyze, did they use the right standard phraseology, and then were they able to express and their concerns about whatever just happened, whatever the thing was. How cool would that be as a follow-up period to analyze and look at that?
Mhm.
That's a
That's
great
awesome.
idea.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to be aviation. I mean, they're walking along, as a squad or, whatever, and they're just communicating, okay, go right, go left, whatever, go forward. And then all of a sudden they get attacked, stuff hits the fan, whatever the case is, or they're in boats, guys working with Navy stuff, naval stuff. So yeah, it could, any situation. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Idea.
Great ideas, guys. Great ideas. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then they talked about extremes, which we also talk about. We talk about task saturation. They didn't use that term, but they're talking about extremes with few or no pauses, high number of items, high workload, high levels of radio congestion. And they had a really good point that performance of all pilots deteriorates, not just foreign pilots, but perhaps more so for non-native speakers. So how do we train for this in our materials we're doing right now for task saturation, for overtasking?
Well, I'm going to be creating something based on what I've done. We did it in 302. It was actually in 302, but the
Mhm.
altitude and heading changes, but then
Yeah.
you have them doing something else,
Mhm.
playing a game or doing something, you get them fully engrossed in that activity.
Sure,
And
kind of
then
like our old
somebody
IMI.
starts reading the heading and altitude, and they have to respond to that.
Sure, so kind of like our
But-
old Navigate IMI had that.
Oh, that too had one like that too. That's right.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we always, and the students get a kick out of it too. And I mean, I kind of wish I could have made it more aviation related, but just having them listen to, I had them listening to a TED talk that dealt with some sort of planes, but not like real technical stuff. And then they're bouncing a ball with one hand, and they're trying
Nice.
to do those math calculations as well. So I told them that the mouth is like trying to watch your instruments, and that the bouncing the ball was actually flying the aircraft. And so if they stopped bouncing or they bounced little tiny bounces, I'm like, you're heading for the ground. And then
Nice.
being able to comprehend what was being said on the TED talk. So those were always,
Yeah.
most students got a
mental,
kick out of it. Yeah, I had one student who was a newbie pilot that he got kind of flustered because he had a really hard time with it.
Mm.
I didn't have to say anything. My more experienced guys were like, no, this is good. Da, 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 da. So anything like that, I always wished I could make it a little more technical. Maybe most of my stuff was not very technical, but it was just, utilizing that activity. I thought it was in 303 actually.
Mhm.
But utilizing their math little fact things that they had them figuring and calculating, and then adding the TED talk to it.
Mm.
And then the
That's
bouncing of the
spot
ball.
on. That's
That's-
spot on
yeah.
because it uses
Great
the
stuff.
tactile, physical, or mental.
Mhm.
And the book mentions that the mental stressors are the worst.
Yeah, bouncy balls that are about fit in they're big, they're the bigger ones, not the little bitty ones. They're like
Mhm.
fit nicely in the palm of your hand. And those
Why
were
not?
really
yeah,
nice.
Why not do something while they're trying to build a Lego?
Oh, there you go. Now you got it.
Watch TED talk, build a Lego, and then answer heading and altitude changes.
Awesome.
watching
So
the video.
so that's why I like your idea, John, of having them listening to the altitude and heading changes instead of like my TED talk. That's where I was going wrong because I didn't have it aviated related. So
Mm.
that's really
Yeah.
cool. That's really cool.
But it still does the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But still, I like that,
Because
making it a little more
ATC
technical.
the ATC doesn't have to, or
But there,
other-
ATC is multitasking. How many planes on their screen?
oh
and
yeah.
and they're tracking stuff in their
Mhm.
sometimes they have those little papers they pass along, and some controller showed me one of these those little tracking papers. I forgot what they're called already. But I mean, ATC is definitely multitasking. I think any job, shoot, as a mom, we multitask as parents,
Mhm.
as curriculum developers, how many projects we got on our plate right now?
Right, right.
Multitasking. So
But I've never heard, what do they do at follow-on training? Because they must do
well,
training
I'm sure
for
they have
that.
sim labs and stuff to
I'm
help
sure
them
they
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
get
talking about the
that kind of
FPS.
experience.
Yeah, you're talking about the FPS, the flight progress strips.
Well, VBS3 might again be able to help in that category too.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
What
We're just
they
you go.
gonna
do,
stay in sim labs all day.
There you go.
well, the sim lab is a full mock-up of an airport. So it's actually,
Mhm.
you're standing in a huge room with the airport
Mhm.
and they can change the weather. They have kind of like a God pod where they have a person that just changes all their, the facilitators will say, we need some more wind, or we need to change this or do that.
Mhm.
While they're handling the planes and they're actually looking at it. That's the later part. In the radar section, they have 2 rooms that has computers, kind of like just a computer lab where they get people to read scripts, and then they have their radar, like 3 or 4 or 5, well, 3 or 4 radar, and then they're working, and then their instructors are coaching and everything. But again, they're trying to do simulation lab kind of things, kind of try to do as real as they can.
Mhm. Cool. So yeah, it sounds like we're on board with this as well. What do we? Let me see. Oh yeah. The one I think was kind of important too. He talked about the assumption that a pilot will improve with time. They'll improve their skills,
yeah.
or their skills will develop as they accumulate more flight hours. And Molesworth and Estival bring this up as an erroneous and dangerous assumption. They say that you may have hours of flight experience, but you could be doing it wrong. It's not necessarily helping you improve. And I think, to me, I said, obviously pilots need to keep training for English communications to improve. But after they leave us, how can we, after they leave DLI and follow on training and go back home, how do we help them continue developing their English communication skills? Or can we?
Yeah, that was
Virtual
one
training.
of the few things that
teams.
jumped out at me in this chapter was that.
What's that? Yeah.
The-
Yeah. Once they're out of our purview, what can we do? I mean,
Mhm.
because they're not just going to automatically get better. Right. Practice doesn't make perfect if you're practicing improperly.
Mhm.
Point.
Well, I think also that, for us, when we send them to follow-on training, we assume their language is going to get better because now they're surrounded by native speakers versus, our Saudis here who are surrounded by Saudi speakers.
Yeah.
So some of that does help, I would think.
But it's not always the case.
But at what
then
point
what
is
about
our
after that?
responsibility done? I mean, when does the responsibility go back to the country and to the
Right.
students themselves? I mean, DLI
Mhm.
can't be responsible for somebody who's been gone and doing their stuff for a year or two.
Yeah, I'm thinking more, what tools can we give them to continue? Because yeah, you're right. We can't be responsible.
I really think we need to develop, and I guess it would have to be web-based, but they were talking about this several years ago about for somehow through the alumni office having a website where students could go and where we could upload videos and audio and have people doing stuff to just keep practicing. But I think the
Mhm.
problem is just materials aren't good enough. You have to have them interacting with other people.
Well, I think it also gets back to what Gene said earlier in our conversation, that at the end of the day, we get paid for what we do here. And I think a lot of the alumni stuff just didn't happen because they're like, okay, how is that? We're giving away materials or what? I think that's kind of what the opinion was over there. Was, okay, we can't just give them training.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and here's another thing too is, especially in the aviation community, we follow these guys' life cycle or their career
Yeah,
cycle.
absolutely.
They come in as a UPT, and then later on they'll go to a new airframe. Here they come again. They go maybe to an IP or a safety course or something. So
Mhm.
it's not, we're going to probably see them 3 to 4 times at least
Mhm,
in
mhm.
their career cycle if they make it a career.
You know what's interesting is I have seen that, and I think it really depends on who they train with. I don't know how, but when I was down in Pensacola, I would have guys that came through me, through the DLI's program. Then they go to a follow-on training, and then they graduate a year later. And you would talk to them a year later, and you could see the improvement in their day-to-day conversational skills. And I really think it's because the Navy is such a small force that there's this camaraderie among them where they hang out together, you know? And but then I saw other students who went to other pipelines, Air Force pipelines or Army pipelines, who didn't come out any better off after a year. They still sounded like they did when they came through me a year before. But I think the Navy thing was the fact that they hang out with each other after hours. They go do sports and things together. They go boating together. They do things together. And I think they probably learned a lot more from hanging out with the Navy than they ever learned in my classroom. It was an interesting perspective, I think.
Hey, Charles, that is interesting because I remember the one I was teaching in SET way back when. But yeah, I had these 3 students. 2 are from I believe they were all naval pilots. I know 2 of them from Saudi Arabia or they were in the Navy. Yeah, they might have been pilots. But it was really cool to see these 2 Saudi guys. They became really good friends with this Polish pilot, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. Hanging out and speaking in English, of course, because they have to,
Right,
and I just
right.
thought it was really cool. And that's something that, yeah, it's just really unique about our school, of course. But
Yeah, yeah.
anyway.
But I think even the tone is different at different follow-on trainings. I think like Columbus seems to have a more official tone to it, and I know Rucker does have a more official tone to it, and I think students are not hanging out with their instructors and other students after class, and I think that makes a big difference actually.
Yeah.
If you're friends with your cohorts, then you're going to learn better how to speak to them, I think.
You learn the Bix.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, and if you're a much smaller minority, I mean, you're
Yeah.
1 or 2 or 3
Yeah.
amongst a group of Americans, you don't have any choice.
Yeah, and they are down in Pensacola. There's generally in a flight class, there's like 4 students for every 80, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So definitely the ratio is different. Yeah. Cool. Other comments or thoughts on this? I think we've kind of run out of time here. It's already 3:15 here. I think because there are some more slides, but I think we're there. I did upload this presentation to the classroom, to the SET working classroom. Certainly if you want to continue the conversation there, if some of the questions we haven't covered or some of we have covered, particularly strike you, maybe comment on them out there, and we can continue talking about some of these issues because I think they are important. Any last minute thoughts from anybody?
Yeah, Charles, thank you. You consolidated that chapter very well into this PowerPoint and everything. Reading through it, I thought this is just a listing of materials. There's nothing really here. I mean, other than spending more time and going down the rabbit hole, as you say, investigating these different resources.
Yeah. Well, I tried to keep it just at a conversational level, or what do you think level?
I like the applications to DLI. That was great, Charles.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was hoping to do. Yeah. But like I said, we didn't quite get through all of it. I didn't think we would. It was like 15 slides, so I didn't think we would. But certainly, if you want to continue it out there, do so. Other comments?
What slide are we on?
I really don't know. Hold on. Let's see.
Do a quick run through. Where are we at?
Actually,
okay, we're only missing one more slide.
Well, no, actually, I got 16 slides. Yeah, there's one more plus future research, which I think is, I kind of try to equate this to DLI as well, because well, let me go ahead and bring it up. Because they talk about analysis of live recordings, speech recognition, text to speech, realistic context. I think we're kind of doing this. We're interested in the future, and we're doing like live ATC and plain English and Sarah and prepared 3D or 4D now, I guess, simulator. I don't know, we're really doing text to speech yet, but I think we are touching on these future areas. So I think we're if not cutting edge, we're getting there. We're getting there, I think. So cool. All right. Well, let me go ahead and stop recording this. So it will actually, I think it'll stop recording when I close it. And then I can share this when it finishes rendering. So Nell and anyone else who missed it can see it. So
Good job, Charles.
thank you.
Nicely done.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and stop the share here. All right. Oh, lots of chats here I missed. Sorry, when you're presenting, you can't see them all.
Nope, you can't.
Yeah, we're a chatty bunch.
That's all right. Cool.
I
Nice.
remembered that Beth gave me the balls. I was like,
Okay.
wait, that's the one that started me on the balls.
Oh, okay. All
Because I
right.
had made them highlight before that. And I was like, this is much better.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, we will adjourn. And like I said, as soon as the recording finishes, I'll get that uploaded. And feel free to download the PowerPoints, the additional reading, etc., or the PowerPoint, additional reading, etc., and discuss it further.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
Charles.
Yeah, Charles. Hey, thanks for posting that.
Hey,
I
no
looked at it
problem.
earlier.
No
But
problem.
also I posted, I don't know if you know, as you know, we've talked about in the past, the FAA,
Yeah.
they teach English for ATC, and they teach aviation English for instructors who will be teaching aviation.
Yeah, I saw
English.
those links.
It would,
Yeah.
it would just be really cool. I mean, it's a little pricey, but it'd be really awesome to be able to sit in on those classes or go there.
It
Anyway, but,
you
so,
know, sometimes some things like that we'd be able to convince them let's do for free.
Oh.
Especially where
that'd
we're a
be
government agency to a government agency, and we're kind
Right.
of have the same goals. It's worth asking. It's worth saying, hey, you know, here's what we do
Mm.
in the same avenue. Can we sit in on one of these? You know, sometimes they'll give it to us.
Yeah, and speaking of that, because this goes back to when we first started teleworking and
Mhm.
talking with Nell, and I was talking with a guy from FAA, and I told him who we are, and Nell was
Yeah.
in contact too, and
Yeah.
they said for a fee they would send somebody out to
Yeah.
us and teach a group of 12, instructors /
Mhm.
curriculum developers, and I was
Hmm.
like, that'd be awesome to see
Yeah,
what they
it would.
what they
It would.
do to get instructors ready for aviation English. But anyway.
Right. No, it would
Yeah.
be. It would be very good.
I mean,
So
we spend money on all kinds of different trainings. I mean, why not that? So
right.
anyway,
Definitely worth
uh,
exploring. Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, have a good rest of the afternoon, and
Okay.
talk to y'all later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
See you
Bye
too.
bye.